Let's talk to the Labour Member of Parliament, Ian Murray. Hello.
Hello, how are you, John?
Well, your reaction to this? I mean, isn't this the law completely overstepping its boundary and treading on the toes of politics?
Actually, quite the opposite. We live in a country with an unwritten constitution that keeps the courts and the legislature and Parliament completely separate. And this is a great opportunity for members of the public who want to challenge a government that's out of control to take that government to court. And I think the conclusion today, where the courts have said that the Prime Minister has acted unlawfully and Parliament's not prorogued, just shows you that our constitution actually works.
Do you think the Prime Minister should go?
I think he absolutely should go. I mean, not only has he lied to the Queen, but he's also lied to Parliament, lied to his own party, and consistently lied to the public. And
well, we don't know what he said to the Queen, do we? So he hasn't.
Well,
he cannot be proved to have lied to the Queen. We don't know what he said.
I think, given the judgment has said that the prorogation is unlawful, then the prorogation, in terms of that being unlawful, must have been that he told the Queen he wanted to stop Parliament for a Queen's speech. And it's quite clear that both the Scottish court said he was just trying to stymie Parliament debating, and the UK, the highest court in this land, with 11 Supreme Court judges, the highest judges in this land, have said that that is also trying to frustrate Parliament. So I suspect he didn't say to the Queen, I want to shut down Parliament to stymie debate. I think he must have said, we want to shut it down in order to have a Queen's speech.
What will the Europeans be thinking?
Well, it would be a mixed bag, I would have thought, because the Europeans have gone from being very sympathetic to the UK in terms of when we left the European Union to 2016 and wanted to do all they could help to now having their head in their hands. And I'd be very surprised if they don't want to be very helpful, because they don't want the UK to leave. They don't want the UK to leave on bad terms if the UK does leave. And therefore, I would hope some of our European partners would be helpful. They have been so far. I mean, Merkel called out Boris Johnson for this 30-day deadline on trying to provide an alternative arrangement that doesn't exist. And Macron said that we might have to delay Article 50 for 2 years to get this sorted out. So I'd be very surprised if our EU partners are not going to be helpful in this case, because they want to do what's in the best interest of them, but also in the best interest for the UK.
We do live in extraordinary times, and Parliament will be resumed tomorrow, 11:30, or certainly that's the call. What do you expect to happen tomorrow from 11:30?
Well, obviously, schedule would be Prime Minister's questions at 12, and whether or not we're able to put that together.
Well, no, they just said, I think John Bercow, sorry to interrupt, John Bercow's statement live said that there wouldn't be enough time to do that given notice requirements, but there would be enough time for urgent questions and statements and debate. So what would you expect to happen in those debates?
Well, I would have thought that many of the opposition parties will bring urgent questions tomorrow, which brings the government minister to the House of Commons chamber under the urgent procedure to answer questions. I would expect a statement from the Leader of the House, as you just said, Jacob Rees-Mogg, and there'll be a whole host of questions to him. And given that Parliament is now no longer prorogued, I would expect us to try and get some more legislation through. There's lots of significant bills waiting in the wings at the moment, and of course we could try again to take control of the order paper and try and sort this mess out ourselves.
Do you know, people listening and they're texting in on 80295 who would desire Scottish independence will say we wouldn't have got to this point had it not been for a Scottish court, because the English court, if you remember, backed the government. The Scottish court did not, and we're only doing this, or the government's only having to go through this, because a Scottish court found against the UK government.
Well, that's a preposterous argument. The only reason that the initial petition was taken to the Court of Session Outer House, which I was a petitioner on and signed the affidavit for, is because the English courts were closed at that period of time, because the holidays of Scotland's English courts are different. And don't forget that the 11 Supreme Court judges today also upheld the appeal from the Gina Miller case in England as well. So the England and Wales case and the Scottish case were all won today. And shouldn't we just celebrate the fact that we have a legal system in this country that is separate? We're able to take these to the highest court in the land, of the UK Supreme Court, and indeed both the Scottish case and the Gina Miller case, the English and Welsh case, were both upheld today. So that's fantastic news. And rather than having us dividing over constitutional lines, which I think is rather pathetic, we should be celebrating the fact that we're holding this government to account and we have a system that allows us to do so.
What do the members of the public make of this, do you think? We're getting texts in saying, well done, British sensibility, etc., etc. What would you say to the public listening to this? When we look at our politicians, what do we think?
Well, John, I think, I would say very clearly to the public, whether you voted Remain or Leave, yes or no, or any political party, I think people just have to take half a step back and see that we have a government here that's completely and utterly out of control, that has no democratic mandate as the Prime Minister, who was only voted in by his own peers and his own membership. We have a Parliament that's completely split, with no way of breaking the impasse and to try and deliver Brexit, a good Brexit, or deliver no Brexit at all. We've got the government throwing out its own members. We've got a majority in Parliament against the government. And when you put all that together, together, I think the public should really be assured that Parliament's not only doing its job in terms of holding a government to account, but it's also the courts are doing their job. And it's something we should cherish in this country. And if anybody wanted to shut down the courts or shut down Parliament, then really they're not looking at the democratic side of all of this. And this is something we should be very proud of in terms of the fact that we're able to take a government to court and get Parliament up and running as the representatives of the people.
But it's completely ineffective government.
Well, of course it's completely ineffective government, but that's because they're an ineffective government, full stop. And the key thing here is now is to get back to Parliament and to let Parliament take control of this process and get rid of a Prime Minister and a government who have effectively not just lied to Parliament and the public, but arguably, and I agree that we don't know what was said to the Queen, but the courts have been quite clear that this is unlawful and therefore potentially lied to the Queen.